Hi y'all, welcome back to my shop. Sometimes we wind up with a bowl blank that's the original shape of it, looks like it could be a chucking challenge. This is a piece of very, very dry dogwood, and as a result of the radial shrinkage, it has opened up and is no longer flat, so I can't use a woodworm screw. I can't really use a face plate. I don't have a big belt sander that I could sand this down. That would take a while. I don't have a power plane that could take this down. So let me show you a couple of options. The one that I'm going to choose to use, you could certainly do it between centers using an appropriate prong center. Might be a two-pronged hammered in, in the grain direction. That's one option. And it gives you a chance to balance the grain, but with dogwood, there's not going to be much of a grain pattern that I need to capitalize. The other way is to use something like this, a four-pronged drive that you can hammer in. But what I chose to do is take it over to the drill press, drill a 1 1/8 inch hole, and I'm going to use my pin jaws. But let me tell you another approach that I could have used, and frankly I'd forgotten I had this accessory because it's been so long since I've used it. I made a bowl driver. Let me see if I can give you a close-up of this. I simply made a round disc out of Baltic birch or cabinet grade plywood, and then I added a glue block to it that I turned a tenon on it so I could mount on the chuck. And I've got two different size tenons. I've got a small tenon for a small chuck or normal jaws, and then I've got a larger tenon that I could use on a larger set of jaws. And what I've done is drilled a series of holes. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 holes spaced around the approximately, I would say, it looks like the center of the hole is, maybe 5/8 of an inch from the edge. And I've used a series of screws so they protrude only, just maybe 3/8 of an inch or 5/16 of an inch through, and I also have a series of 5 screws in the middle. So it'll engage the wood with multiple points with just a little bit of pressure on it. That'll keep the thing in place and movement even when you don't have contact over the entire surface. So I could have used this, I should have, but I'd forgotten about it until I got further into deciding I'd make a video. So I'm going to use my pin jaws. And with these pin jaws, I can get away with the smallest hole that I've got a drill bit for is 1 1/8 inch. I drilled it about a half or 5/8 of an inch deep, and it's going to be deep enough where it's not going to register on the back. It's not going to register back here, but that's okay because it's farther enough on there that when I turn this, it takes 3 hands. Get the other bar. I'm using a precision atomic bar chuck that happens to have these jaws mounted on it. So tighten it up, and let's see how that looks. Yeah, that looks like it's perpendicular. So that's how I'm going to mount it. This blank is about 3 inches thick and about 8 inches across. It's dry as a bone. I should have taken the bark off. I didn't realize I had it out in my stash, and then I figured I might as well use it before the bugs finally get to it, and I'm hoping that I won't find too much bug damage when I take the bark off. With this size bowl, a 1/2 inch bar stock bowl gouge is plenty big enough. So let's. Someone compared to using the tailstock on a project like this that's secured on the other side with wearing a seat belt. You hope you never have to use it, but it's nice if you're wearing it, if you get in an accident. Coming straight in to knock off that bark. Go ahead and take this back, clean off the metal, and bring it up. Now we'll shape the outside, and then we'll come back and worry about adding the tenon. Got the speed up to about 1,000. Still got bark on it. I've got a little ways to go. Okay, still got some more bark. Got some rough little bark here, a little bit more bark here. And I've got this uneven size, so I'm going to go ahead before I go much further and at least on the back side level it up on the what will be the rim, so I'll know where the top of the bowl is going to be. This dried dogwood is beating me up. I think I should switch to a 5/8 inch. Incorporate this tenon into and use it as part of the foot. So as a result, I need to make a fairly large tenon. And I've got this little jig a friend made. And that lets me know how large it needs to be. Okay. And as usual, I get in there to get this dovetail detail in the corner with a 3/8 inch detail gouge, rather pointed. And then just a brief chamfer on the end. Okay. Now I've got the tenon on there. Oh, I've still got some bark on there, so that's not going to work. I've got to go down even deeper to get past this bark. Just a little more. Lean shoulder, pull it back. So I'll get a nice flat for the bowl jaws to rest on. Okay. Now we go back to shaping it. Instead of a 1/2 inch bowl gouge, I'm going to use a large spindle gouge just because I've got it. It's 5/8 inch, so it's got a lot of steel and it's got a large fingernail grind on it, so it allows easy removal of chips. Okay, the bark's gone. I just got to clean up that surface a little bit. Okay, got a nice clean cut. Got a few tool marks I can clean up. I'll do a little bit of shear scraping with this, and I'll probably switch to a shear scraper to get a nice even curve around here. Got a burr on it, bring it around. Nice small shaving. Okay, I've got a nice even curve. I'm happy with that, very smooth surface. I'm going to go ahead and sand this because I'm going to put a texture band here. I've got to sand it to the final finish. I see I've got a little bit of tool mark here. I need to probably clean up with that shear scraper before I go on to sanding. Okay. All right, I'm going to start sanding with, I think, 150 grit. All right, I'm going to use a spiraling and texturing tool to put a spiral band on here, so I need to mark this. So I'm going to mark the outer edge of that band. To do that, you need to get this down to the final sanding finish, so I got it down to 320. Okay, so I'm going to texture between that band, and I'm using a crown tool, a crown saddle, but on a Robert Sorby. Actually, this is a shop-made version with a Sorby cutter, so this is kind of a Frankenstein tool, but it works. So we're going to get that in there at about that angle, and that should get a nice. And I'm using the smallest cutter, I believe it's 4mm, and I'm going to take the speed of this down to no more than 700. And I'm going to come up, bring the handle high, it's a scraper, and then bring it up to engage. And let's see what kind of results we got. I got good results. I'm happy with that. It's not as clean as some of them I've had, but it's still a nice spiral. Next thing I'm going to do, anytime you do texturing, actually I think I may come back in there and try to engage it one more time in that cut, see if I can't get it a little bit deeper. So it's cut a little bit like thread chasing. With this cutter, I just ease it in until I pick up and engage into the cuts that are already there, and then move it slowly across. And I think I got it a little bit deeper. Now, anytime you do texturing, it's like a picture. You need to put a picture frame on it. So I'm going to put a V-groove on each side, maybe a bead. So I think what I'm going to do in this case, I'm going to put a V-groove on both sides, and then I'm going to come back under on both sides to have this elevated just a little bit proud of the surface. So we're going to turn the speed back up a little bit. Somewhere close to 1,000. And I can clearly see where the edge of that texturing is. That's where I'm going to put my V-tool, my point tool. Same thing on this side. And that looks good. Okay. Now, I'm having second thoughts. Rather than come up under there a lot, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bead there on both sides. I think it's a little faster, and it'll look just fine. So I'm going to use a D-way beading tool, I think, to do that. I'm going to come up. We're not in the V groove, but next to it. I think I'm going to lower the tool rest just a little bit. Engage it and then rock it back and forth on each side. Very nice. And then do the same thing on the other side. Leave just a little bit of a gap for that V groove. Actually, I probably ought to put it right in that V-groove. Let's see what this bottom looks like. No, I think that's fine. Just outside of that V-groove. And I think we're going to leave those beads recessed. No, I think I'm still going to come up under just a little bit up under that up to that bead, just to accentuate it just a little bit. So I think I'm going to look at using this scraper for that, leaving it flat. I've got this little sharp, crisp Raffin Tomislav little corner. Just ease that around. I think I'm going to bring it up a little bit. And blend it so it doesn't change the basic shape. I think that looks good. I'm going to come in with the other side here. Lift the handle up because it is a conventional scraper. And then right next to that bead, you bead it just too proud. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, you need to come in a little bit deeper, right next to the bead. Okay, now I'm going to come up on the side, take a shear cut, clean that surface a little bit. And I'll come back and sand. I'll do the same thing on this side. How's that shape look? Yeah, I'm happy with that. Let's do a little sanding next to the edge and we'll be ready to reverse it. So I sand up to 320 back in the areas right up to that bead that I had scraped away. Once you texture, you can't go back and touch this. What you can do though is get rid of any little frizzies by using a non-woven abrasive pad to kind of burnish it and clean up the frizzies. So now we go ahead and take it off. Okay, there's that. Now we take the chuck off. Actually, in this case, because of this spindle adapter, I've got to use a shop-made wrench that just fits that adapter. It's a large set of jaws that mounted on a large chuck. Don't need a chuck this large, but I do want these large jaws to allow for a large tenon that I can cut back on to make the foot when I reverse the bolt. Okay, so I've got at least a ½ inch to come down in the middle to get even with the rim because of the shrinkage. So again, I'm going to go back to that 5/8 inch bowl gouge so it won't beat me up so much because this wood is dry and dusty and hard. So we go straight in. Cut and kind of knock off the top edge. Raise the tool rest just a little bit. I'm cutting a little below center. push cut, because this side is somewhat even, not quite. I guess we'll do a little more on the rim here. And let's get rid of that very, very sharp edge. It's like a razor. Okay, now I flatten this in so I can come in there and do a push cut without it bouncing too badly. So now I'm going to switch back to a 1/2 inch bowl gouge, make it a little easier to cut. I'm not very far off the tool rest. And I'm going to use a Thompson 1/2 inch. It's got a fairly open flute that works well on hollowing the inside, so I'm going to start in the middle. Now, I like to use a depth drill to set the hole, so let me first make just a little bit of a divot here. Okay. I'm using a 1/4 inch. You use a 3/8 of an inch, you're going to find it very, very aggressive, so I wouldn't go any bigger than a 1/4 of an inch. So I've scored little marks here so I can set one and I see where that mark is. That gets me pretty close to where I want to be. So here we go. There we go. Now I get real cautious when I get to the bottom of that depth hole. I'm going to work my way back to the rim. Now we can finish hollowing. Pushing straight in. Nice, okay. Now, I'm cutting end grain all the way across. I got a couple of choices. I can either use a bottom feeder or a scraper. I prefer to use a bottom feeder to eliminate most of the waste, and then I'll come in there with a scraper. So let's get the tool rest adjusted. And I'm going to use a 5/8 inch. And it just has a very flat across grind. I've got a video on this on the bottom of the bowl gouge grind. Really fighting in there. Getting pretty close to final size now. I've got a few ripples in there. Now I'm going to use a conventional bowl scraper to kind of clean this up a little bit. Your hands are more sensitive than your eyes. I've got a little bit of a ridge right here. Let me draw a line on each side. If you draw a line in the middle, it'll disappear as soon as you touch it. This way, I gotta get rid of the pencil marks. Okay. Alright, now I'm going to switch to a negative rake scraper. I've got a very nice heavy duty one here, M42 steel with Carter & Sons that really clean that bottom up. The biggest difference is it's just not nearly as aggressive. You don't have to be as fussy with the handle. And because of that finer bevel here, it's just not as aggressive. So it's only a finishing tool. Very nice fluffy shavings. The one thing about the negative rake scraper is you don't need to have as long a tool handle. For a conventional scraper, you want at least a 7-to-1 ratio of what's behind the hangover on the tool rest compared to what's in front of it. With the negative rake scraper, you can be as low as 3-to-1, so you can get by with a much smaller handle. And in addition, you can come out here on the rim without the concern of exploding like you would with a conventional scraper. Okay, I sand by hand after I finish the shear scraping with the negative rake scraper. So I sand it up through the grits, up to about 240 by hand. And then I'm going to switch to an inertia sander for starting at 280. This is such a hard wood and I've got such a nice surface, I'm going to go ahead and sand it up to 400. Alright, time to reverse chuck it. Take the bowl off the chuck. So leave it on until I get a better handle there. Now I can take that off. And because I have a vacuum chuck, I'm going to use a vacuum chuck because it's the easiest way to finish off the bottom of a bowl. You need to have that little divot from the live center to be able to center the bowl. 90-degree cone instead of a 60-degree cone because it gives nice support without doing any further damage. But it'll still get in that divot. Plug in my revolving center, it goes right into the hand wheel. It makes it really easy to install. Trying to decide whether I want to take out a little more here. I think I do. I need to refine that just a little bit further.
going to clean that up with this scraper. Pull that up just a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to use this technique I learned from Richard Rappin and reinforced by watching Thomas Etch, and that's using this little notch to add a little decoration at the end, right here. Come in and concave it to the other side. Test it for flatness again. Now I'm finishing up my sanding. Alright, now we turn off the vacuum chuck. And the bowl drops into our hands. It's finished except for the finish. So I'm going to put some Minwax antique oil on it and put several coats and then buff it. Very happy with the appearance.